Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse from Law Astrology, and in this recording I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Venus retrograde. So just to get some dates out of the way first, so you are aware of when everything is happening. The 17th of November, Venus will enter the shadow zone. And then on the 19th of December 2021, Venus will station retrograde in the sign Capricorn. The midpoint of that retrograde period will be on the 9th of January, when Venus will conjoin the Sun, make a conjunction with the Sun. And then Venus will station direct on the 29th of January 2022. And then Venus will finally exit the shadow zone of this Venus retrograde period on the 2nd of March 2022. So it's around a 40-day period, kind of 41 days, 42 days, depending on whether you count the station days. But generally, we think of this as a 40-day period. And it is interesting that if we look in various religions, particularly in Christianity, we find that this 40 days seems to be very significant. We have 40 days and 40 nights of rain. We have 40 days and 40 nights of Christ in the desert. There's punishments of 40 lashes. Lent is 40 days. So this number 40 seems to keep reappearing, and it does so in other religions as well, which tells us that, maybe there is a root here somewhere. Maybe it is connected to Venus. We don't know for sure, but certainly we have this idea of Venus going into the underworld as she kind of disappears from sight, as she kind of moves back towards the sun. We lose sight of her as she goes through this process of rebirth, because as we go into the retrograde period, Venus is an evening star. And once she goes past the sun, she will become the morning star. So she's being reborn from evening star to morning star. Venus retrograde follows a very specific cycle. So we can actually look back and see where Venus was in the past. It'll give us an idea of what we might expect during the upcoming retrograde. So the last retrograde in Capricorn was January 2014. So Venus follows this 8-year cycle. And in that 8-year cycle, Venus will conjoin the Sun retrograde 5 times. And also it will conjoin the Sun in a superior conjunction when it's moving in direct motion 5 times as well. But these retrograde conjunctions are what Ariel Gutman says are star points. So we've got the idea of the star, the Sun being our star, our local star, which of course gives us life. But also these conjunctions, if you plot them, the retrograde conjunctions, if you plot them on a circle, on a chart, on a blank chart, and join those dots up together, you will actually see that it is the shape of a 5-pointed star. This symbol has been considered sacred or important for aeons, for thousands of years. I think it was in Erin Sullivan's book. I'm just looking at it. It's on my desk here. Erin Sullivan's book, The Retrograde Planets, book that she wrote, which is excellent, by the way. She commented that in Egypt, the 5-pointed star was connected to the idea of raising someone up, almost like raising a child, but also connected to the concept of teaching. There is something about being connected to the point of origin, being connected to all that is and being taught by that. And also this whole idea of almost being kind of midwifed as well in life. And so I feel like all of these concepts, all of these ideas are resonant with Venus retrograde, that it's a time of teaching, it's a time of helping us to learn, helping us to connect to that point of origin, back to source. The number 5 is also significant in other ways as well. It's in astrological terms, it's connected with the quintile aspect, which is 72 degrees. So if you divide 360 by 5, you get 72. So this is the quintile aspect, considered to be incredibly creative, very spiritual aspect. And the number 5 is also connected with the golden ratio as well, which we find everywhere in nature and is connected to the idea of perfection. So as I mentioned before, Venus, following this very specific pattern of conjunctions over time, means that we can look back to 2014, in this case, January 2014, and consider what was going on in our lives around that time. And it's possible that as we come to this new Venus retrograde in Capricorn, there will be some echoes of what we were learning at the time. And I really want to be very specific about the fact it's what we are learning. Sometimes when we say, oh, look back to a part of your life and you're just going, oh my God, like January 2014 was hell on earth. Everything went wrong. The worst things in the world happened. When I say look back, it doesn't necessarily mean that the events that occurred will be the same kind of events that are occurring now. So that's the distinction we need to make. It's not necessarily about the events. It's about the underlying lessons. So if you're thinking back, look at what did I learn? What was I tested on? And what did I learn around that time? Because this is what you are being brought back to, what we are all being brought back to. So to understand a bit more about Venus retrograde in Capricorn, we need to think about what Venus in Capricorn means. So Capricorn is, of course, an earth sign. It is associated with structure, tradition, authority, formalities. It's quite what I would think of as a dry sign. It's not necessarily particularly demonstrative. Whereas Venus, we think of as a planet that is associated with love and harmony, and everything is very beautiful with Venus. But when she is in Capricorn, she's very concerned with the idea of love being long-lasting, with the idea of commitment from the heart. And it's not just about relationships. Venus is about our values. It's not just who we love, it's what we love. It's what we're attracted to, what we find beautiful or harmonious or appealing, aesthetically appealing. So Venus in Capricorn might also be speaking about our commitment to our job. For example, Capricorn is a sign that is associated with profession and what we're trying to achieve out there in the world. And Venus is saying, is your heart truly in this? And we can think about that for lots of different aspects of our lives. And it'll be specific to the house that Venus is going to be retrograde in your own chart. That will show the area of life where Venus is inquiring, is your heart really in this? Does this really matter to you? Is this really important? Do you feel good here? If you would like to know more about how Venus retrograde will affect you, I have just recorded a video for my patrons where I explored this Venus retrograde through the houses for the signs. If you would like to join my Patreon and access that recording, the link will be in the information box below. So with Venus in Capricorn, we're really looking at, is my heart in this for the long term? Is there mutual respect here? What are the formalities that we need to go through here for things to feel good? On a more global level, this may be looking at financial institutions, because Capricorn is associated with the idea of institutions and traditions. So we certainly could be looking at things like banking and just general financing across the world. Governments as well. Governments and money, well, that's a big old story for all of us. It's possible that there may be more that's coming out perhaps around some of the very large amounts of money that are being moved around in secret and so on. We've had all the Pandora Papers and all these kinds of things talking about the money of the super rich. That's a possibility that we're going to be exploring more about that, or questioning more about that, because of course this information has come out, but what are we going to do with that as individuals, as a collective? What are we going to do about that? So to understand more about the collective experience and the story that is going to be accompanying Venus retrograde, we need to really look at the aspects that Venus will be making, the connections to the other planets that Venus will be making. So 17th of November, Venus goes into the shadow zone, as I mentioned. 19th of November, so this is before she is retrograde, she's going to make a trine to Uranus. There's only going to be the one trine between them, but it tells us that there is something about changing, because Uranus likes to modernize, update, free and liberate things. So Venus is telling us there is something about freeing the heart, freeing ourselves, upgrading what we think of as important in our lives or valuable in our lives. There's some kind of awakening of the heart going on with Venus trine to Uranus. We then have Venus sextile Neptune on the 30th of November. So this is going to be a repeated aspect. So repeatedly, we are pointed in the direction of loving one another unconditionally. Neptune and Venus, when they join together in a positive aspect, speak of unconditional love. Neptune is like the higher vibration of Venus. Venus is about kind of earthly love, and Neptune is kind of spiritual love, God love, holy love. So Venus sextile Neptune is inviting us. A sextile is an invitation to see how we can better connect with one another and find some unity with one another. Neptune is very concerned with peace and the idea of just that connection between all things, trusting that we are connected to everything, trusting the universe, Venus sextile Neptune. But we are going to be challenged because Venus is also going to run into the waning Pluto-Eris square. And this is going to be the really main feature of Venus retrograde in Capricorn, because Venus will square Eris firstly on the 7th of December. This is when we're going to be introduced to the themes that we're going to be working with for this Venus retrograde. So Venus square Eris, 7th of December, Venus conjunct Pluto, 11th of December. This is before the retrograde, but note what's going on around this time, because this is going to begin the chapter, begin the story. So Venus, particularly with the conjunction to Pluto, it tells us that there is something that we need to strip away, that we need to release, get rid of. Pluto is all about elimination of things that are toxic. What is poisoning your heart? What is stopping you from loving? And I don't just mean, a romantic relationship. What is stopping you loving yourself? What is stopping you loving your life? What is stopping you loving people, loving the world? Yes, I know it's a challenge sometimes, but there has to be love, some sense of deeply, passionately valuing life, valuing what we've been given. Otherwise, there is this emptiness, there is jealousy, Eris coming in and sort of getting really fed up that she wasn't part of the party. This was the story of the judgment of Paris. So what happened there was Eris actually turned up to the party that she had not been invited to, really angry. She threw a golden apple into the field where all the other goddesses were, and it was marked to the fairest. And Paris had to basically say which goddess is the most beautiful. And all the goddesses started making all these enticing promises that they would give him this or give him that. And Aphrodite promised Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, who happened to be Helen of Troy, who also happened to be already married. Aphrodite is the Greek version of Venus. So Venus offered Paris everything, the most beautiful thing in the world that he could have. And so he chose Aphrodite. He gave her the apple, and consequently everything just went to hell and back, because this was the beginning of the fall of Troy. So we've got a story here speaking about sometimes the things that we think we want. Capricorn is very much about the conditioning that we receive, the things that we're told that we want in life, that we're meant to like, particularly, for example, money. We're all meant to want to have lots of money. We're all meant to be getting married. We're all meant to, be in love and dating, and everything's wonderful, and have the perfect house and the perfect car and the kids and, all the rest of it. We have this aesthetic. We see it in social media now, these certain aesthetics that we're all supposed to be kind of wanting to have and recreating in our own homes and in our own lives. And we're all scared to kind of be outside of the box in some way, and maybe embracing a different kind of aesthetic or a different kind of life. So this Venus conjunction to Pluto and square to Eris is telling us that we've really got to be aware of the elephant in the room, because Eris, although she's seen as a troublemaker, and I know I've said this before, but I keep saying it because it's important, she's seen as a troublemaker, but she's actually pointing out where there is trouble already. And therefore, we need to acknowledge that there is a problem, and then we can eradicate the problem. We can make a change. The power of love, Venus conjunct Pluto, the power of love is transformational, whether it's the love that we have for someone else or whether it's the love that we have for ourselves. So this is a really deep and profound journey that we're going to have during Venus retrograde. Everything is stripped away, stripped bare. That's what Pluto does as well. He strips Venus bare, so we can see everything. We might be feeling a little bit exposed. In fact, when Venus stations retrograde on the 19th of December, Chiron is actually stationing on the same day. So it's actually stationary. It's 4 hours later. So we can see from that there is some kind of sense of feeling somewhat exposed. And this is going to be a really sacred and spiritual journey, because the Sabian symbol of Venus stationing retrograde is pilgrims climbing the steep steps leading to a mountain shrine. So it's hard work. It's not necessarily easy, but then it's worth it. Sometimes, we have hard lessons because we need them. We need them. We need to keep putting one foot in front of the other. The pilgrims climbing the steep steps. This is a tough call, but the pilgrims know that there is something worthy at the top of this mountain, that there's a reason for them to be doing all of this. In the same way for us, there's a reason for all of this. But yes, we might be feeling a little bit exposed, a little bit vulnerable. Venus will actually conjoin Pluto for the second time during the retrograde period, actually on Christmas Day, so 25th of December. So that's going to make for an interesting Christmas Day. But then again, we could remember that this is about the power of love. And yes, absolutely, we need to be blasting out Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the power of love, a real kind of Christmas song now. So Venus conjunct Pluto on Christmas Day is kind of interesting symbolism, because obviously Christmas Day is all centered around the Christian mythology of the birth of Christ. So we have this idea of rebirth, and that is something that this whole story is connected to as well, because Pluto is about regeneration. Pluto is like the phoenix being born from the ashes. The ashes consume, but then they give life. So we've got something about the whole process of regeneration and rebirth with this Venus conjunction to Pluto. On the 29th of December, Mercury will then conjoin Venus. So now we're bringing heart and mind together. Maybe we're having an important conversation around this time, communicating what it is that we have discovered, or just kind of understanding within ourselves, bringing together all of these feelings and being able to put them into words, even to ourselves. 31st of December, Venus will square Eris again. So again, we have something that is disharmonious around us. We're aware of the disharmony around us, and we need to do something about that. We need to kind of reframe or restructure so that we can get rid of this problem, to kind of get rid of the trouble. Venus will then sextile Neptune again on the 5th of January. So now once again, we're invited to practice unconditional love, or maybe even just compassion for ourselves, compassion for others, have that sense of connection to spirit. The Sun will then conjoin Venus on the 9th of January. So remember I said this is the midpoint. This is the star point, referencing Ariel Gutman's work. And the Sabian symbol will be a 5-year-old child carrying a bag filled with groceries. So yeah, it feels quite heavy. This feels heavy. These responsibilities that we're carrying feel heavy. Maybe we need to check in with whether what we are carrying is actually ours to carry. Sometimes we carry the karma, or just the heaviness, the psychological, emotional heaviness of experiences that we've had in the past that have come down from our parents or caregivers. So maybe again, we need to just look at, what am I carrying? What is weighing me down? One thing I wanted to reference on a global level with the Venus conjunction to the Sun is that it's going to be joined by asteroids London, Paris, and Hylonome. And Hylonome in mythology had a bit of a sad story because her husband was killed in the battle of the centaurs with the Lapiths, if I remember rightly. And so she basically decided to kind of down her arms and just killed herself. She laid down and died. So Hylonome kind of is this figure of giving up and self-sacrifice. And I just wondered, with London and Paris, obviously these two asteroids speak of London and Paris, England and France. And certainly over here in the UK, there have been a lot of problems with our relationship with France at the moment. And there's a whole big story of the potential of the UK triggering Article 16, which is going to be a whole big kerfuffle of problems if that happens, because it's going to massively break down the relationship between ourselves and the EU, if it could be any more broken than it already is. So I'm just noting it, that it's there, that maybe there's going to be more conversation about our relationship with Paris, or our relationship with France. For us collectively, I'm just kind of focusing on Hylonome, and maybe there is some element of, we need to look at where we are kind of sacrificing ourselves for others, because that can obviously sometimes be a positive thing, but not if we're metaphorically killing ourselves. You know, sometimes it's really nice to do great things for other people. And Venus always wants to make everybody happy. But we don't want to get to a point where we're giving so much of ourselves away that we're kind of negating ourselves and treating ourselves badly. On the 28th of January, Venus and Mars will begin a very, very long conjunction. It's actually going to last until the 8th of April. So I'm just noting it's there. We start to get this feeling there's something that we need to bring together. There's this feeling of we need to unite what is in our heart with our actions. Whatever we're drawn to, whatever we're attracted to, now there's this growing sense that we need to take action. We need to do something about that. The other reason that I wanted to point out this very long conjunction between Venus and Mars is that during the Venus retrograde, around 10 days before Venus and Mars start to move close enough together to be in a conjunction, the north and south nodes will change signs. So the north node is going to move into Taurus, Venus's sign, and the south node will move into Scorpio, which is Mars's sign. Mars is the co-ruler of Scorpio along with Pluto. And of course, Venus is going to be making all of these conjunctions to Pluto as well. So when we look at that, we can really see here that this is a powerful beginning of a very karmic story. So the Venus retrograde, to me, seems to be playing into the beginning story of this movement of the nodes through Taurus and Scorpio, which tells us on a collective level that we are being encouraged towards looking at our resources, Taurus, and our security for the future, Taurus, and to figure out how we can get rid of, South Node, all this waste, all this toxic stuff that we just kind of throw away. We're very much a throwaway society. And we're really being shown here that that sense of being a throwaway society has perhaps gone into our psyche as well. And there are other things that we are throwing away that perhaps are much more valuable than we realize in all different ways. So this is, like I say, a very, very karmic start to the new year, a very karmic period of time with the rulers of the North and South node coming together in this extra long conjunction. At a later date, I will be doing more about the nodes changing signs. So there's a lot more to say on that. But I think it was important to mention it in this reading. 29th of January, Venus will station direct on the Sabian symbol. An illustrated lecture of natural science reveals little known aspects of life. So now we're really starting to see there is something that we have learned here, where we've actually got a lesson in this image. And so now we're really starting to understand something that we didn't see before, because it's been illustrated, it's been shown to us. So now we start to feel as though we can move forwards again, slowly, steadily. We can't rush things because Venus is still in the shadow zone. But we're getting a sense of, now I'm understanding the big picture. And Venus will then conjoin Mars, make that conjunction, the second conjunction. The first one was back in July last year. Might be useful to have a little look back to July last year, 2021, this will be. So have a look at what was going on around that time. What was coming together? What were you trying to do around that time that you were putting your heart in, but maybe it wasn't quite happening just yet? Now we get that second hit to Venus conjunct Mars, and something is almost like being birthed. That's the kind of sense that I'm getting here. It's almost like birth pangs. 24th of February, Venus will sextile Neptune. So once again, we get that prompt to kind of put our hearts into something that is meaningful, that we really truly believe in with Neptune. 26th of February, Venus will then square Eris again. So this is the last time where we sense that disharmony the trouble, the kind of the itch that must be scratched, that we must do something about. And then on the 1st of March, to kind of finish this whole period, Venus will then trine the North Node. We've evolved. We have evolved because Venus now is kind of pointing the way ahead. The North Node is all about our soul's evolution. So we get this sense of the way ahead. Venus exits the shadow zone and then conjoins Pluto for the final time on the 3rd of March. And we have, it is like, this is the end. This is the moment when we have the rebirth, the sense of being born again. And after that, Venus will then go into Aquarius along with Mars on the same day. They are tightly together and will conjoin Mars on the 6th of March. And now we have this sense that we have a new beginning. Now we are free to follow our hearts, to act on the heart's call, because we have got rid of, eliminated the things that were toxic and perhaps taking us in the wrong direction. This concludes my reading for Venus retrograde in Capricorn. As I mentioned before, do come over to my Patreon if you would like to know more about Venus retrograde for your sign. And I'm wishing you many blessings on your path.